It's now on.
I think we're gonna get started. Thank you for taking the time this morning and on a holiday weekend. We have planned a second forum. The date is
July 19th.
Tuesday, July 19th. We haven't confirmed yet location or time, but we just came up with that was a date that worked for us in between council meetings and stuff like that. So obviously there'll be more notice. We will try to get better Facebook smarts. We're not really the greatest Facebook people. I need to get my 15-year-old son to show me how to do a lot of stuff. But we will make sure that Mary had suggestions about posting, a link to the page and all of the different Black Rock community pages, and instructing people how to go to the page, like it, and click on the notifications, our district page, so that they're more aware of what's going on. So I think I'm gonna hand this over to Scott, because obviously I think everyone here is here because of the budget and property taxes. So Scott co-chairing the committee, was close to the numbers, and kind of give you an overview of what occurred in the last few months.
Yeah, so again, thanks for coming out. Appreciate your concern. I think the one thing I want to say first and foremost is that this was the mayor's budget. He proposed it. He laid out how he wanted the money to be spent, and the job as council, as the committee is to try to parse through it and figure out what's going on. And I will also say I do not like this budget any more than I think any of you do. My family got hit with a tax increase. Anybody who knows where I live knows that we're paying a substantial number to the city, as I know many of you are. It was a less than ideal situation, and part of it is rooted in how the charter is structured. There were a number of cuts that we wanted to do as a committee, and we had whittled out about $13 million worth, in terms of reductions, which would be about 3 mils, 2.5 mils. Okay, and there's some back and forth and things like that. But if we were to propose the numbers that we wanted to, again, the structure is the mayor would veto. And if he vetoed everything we cut, it would be his full $560 million budget. And that's not anything any of us wanted, okay? And even at the last minute, there was some negotiation. There were a couple positions that, I in particular felt were superfluous. And the mayor basically said, well, I'll be vetoing the budget. And so we'll play a little game here and there, and trade out $400,000 for this for $400,000 of that. And in one position is quite frankly, one of the mayor's old advisors that he really wants around as a crutch. And it's that sort of small thing which, as you add up through the budget, become more substantial. And those are the kind of things that, again, with the council that we have now, is a little more favorable to the mayor. There's no way that we could get an override of mayor's vetoes. Those are just the hard numbers. There are a number of us who would have favored a leaner budget, a substantially leaner budget, but we know that's part of the reality. Okay. The other aspects, there are some changes in terms of what is demanded in terms of what the city owes for pensions and other obligations, and those are substantial. And I know Mr. Walker and I have spoken about that, and they are substantial and weighty and significant, and they really need some long-term addressing. In between April 7th and April 7th and May 9th, that wasn't going to happen. That sort of structural change wasn't going to happen, and that's the sort of thing that we would like to address long-term in the months that are not budget season. Yeah.
So they're going to change the plans. There shouldn't be defined benefit plans anymore. There should be defined contribution plans like we all get. We don't get these final pay plans.
Right. And the new hires are now moving on to a plan like that.
Right.
But the bottom line is that we have pension obligations of the top of my head, I think it's something like 450 million that are sitting out there. And, you know, we have an obligation to that, in terms of trying to meet that. And, you know, if you step aside from Republican, Democrat, whatever, you know, there is some obligation to make payments to those pension plans and to the debt service that we need to do. We can't ignore that forever and ever. And so part of the budget went to resolve some of those pension obligations. Me personally, I wanted to cut what we put into it this past year more. But again, this is a committee, and, you know, it didn't go as deep as I would have personally liked. You know, I think we could have shaved to millions, maybe 1.5, 2, something like that. But again, it's a committee decision, and again, you know, where does that go? So on the bright side, you know, we're being more realistic in terms of looking at some of our pension obligations and making an effort there, but it comes at a cost, and we're all feeling that right now. Yeah, Marcy?
Well, I mean, to state the obvious, just put it on the record.
Mm-hmm.
Our properties have no value if we can't sell them. And we know that there are properties that are on the market for 3 years, 5 years, and have no foot traffic whatsoever, and it's because of the taxes. And so, you know, I think we all understand, you know, the position in terms of you and on the council and what you're trying to do. Meanwhile, and I think Mr. Walker probably has stuff to say to this. I mean, I'm naive when it comes to Bridgeport politics. But, I mean, the question is, so what can we do? Because the status quo is unacceptable. I mean, it is unfair to simply use this as the golden goose and leave us holding the bag, because there are people who have depended on the value of their properties as something they can do for retirement. Okay? And that's just unacceptable. So the question is, what do we do to, you know, I mean, I realize that when most of the council's on their side, I don't know if most of the people in Bridgeport are on their side. But, you know, and they may be. But, you know, my interest is, what can we do in terms of recourse? Because I understand the fact plan, but I'm not willing to go, you know, put my tail between my legs and say, okay, so we're fucked. Everybody pardon me.
That's a good word.
You know,
I've heard it before,
that's how you use it.
but we just got bleeped, you know.
I'll edit that part.
And I assume everyone here agrees with me. Yes.
Yeah, I can't argue with it, and you know, during again, budget, I met with Ken Flato, he's our finance director, and he kept saying, oh, you know, it's only a few hundred homes here in the city that are really gonna get hit, and I'm like, yeah, but, you know, I agree with that. It's not just a few hundred homes. But the point is that drives the values of the properties down, and, you know, what happens to our grand list as the property values go down.
Do these people live in Bridgeport?
I'm sorry?
Are these people making these decisions all own homes in Bridgeport and pay taxes in Bridgeport?
I
mean,
well,
they're out of their minds. I mean, they're not doing stuff.
Yeah, where does Flato live?
Yeah.
Fairfield. Kiddo lives in the watermark.
So he's not destroying his own value, he's destroying our value. I mean, why are these people in these positions who don't feel the pain?
Well, yeah. They,
City Governance 101 says that the job of city leadership is to grow the tax base faster than the budget. According to Danny Roach, the final grand list was down 20%. Failure. The spending has gone up significantly since 2008. So as a result, the mill rate went up 29%. Every time you raise the mill rate, you reduce property values, you take people's home equity, you reduce the attractiveness of the city as a place to live and do business. The problem is not several $1 million in the current budget. The problem is that nobody wants to develop in Bridgeport, and they're not gonna wanna develop in Bridgeport with a 54 mil tax rate. The problem is you have way more than $400 million in unfunded pension obligations because the interest rate, the rate of return assumptions that are being assumed are ridiculous. The problem is that we have the highest unfunded obligation per taxpayer for retiree health care on the planet, and we should have no retiree health care. We should have zero. That's $1 billion, which is tens of millions of dollars a year. The problem is that Joe Ganim obviously doesn't have the willingness or ability to do what needs to be done. And I understand how the charter is structured. He probably doesn't want to reform the charter either to actually provide checks and balances. This state doesn't have term limits. It doesn't have, the citizens don't have the right to approve the budget. We don't have initiative. We don't have referendum, and we don't have recall. All right? And believe me, he'd be recalled, and a lot of other people would too if we had that right. So here's what we need. We need, just like Puerto Rico is going to get, and the president signed it Thursday, we need an independent financial control board to restructure these cities' finances outside of bankruptcy, and we need it now. And the city council needs to demand it, and the mayor needs to request it, because the governor has the power to do it. And that's what we need. A lot of people want to spin off and go back to Fairfield or create our own, and we will pursue those, options. But that will take more time. What we need right now is an independent financial control board to be able to make the tough decisions that, quite frankly, elected officials may not want to make, okay? But need to be made in order to save the city. And that's what I will call for on Tuesday night. And if we don't get that, then, this place will go bankrupt. And let me tell you, what people don't seem to understand is that, the retirees, and, et cetera, they'll get a cram down. They'll get a cram down in bankruptcy. And so if we had any leadership in the city, they'd be able to do something to help people understand it is in their interest to be able to restructure outside of bankruptcy. Because in this state, it's not constitutionally protected. It's not protected by contract right. It's a property right, and property right is the lowest priority of all the rights. And those are the facts, all right? So the thing I'm upset about is, not as much the fact that my taxes went up $8,000 a year, which, by the way, I wouldn't be paying $8,000 a year if I moved to South Carolina for the same value home, all right? What I'm upset about is nothing is being done to treat the disease. To be able to make this an attractive place to develop, I'm talking about tax-paying properties. I'm not talking about all this stuff that people are doing that you don't get any tax revenues on at all. All right? And or to be able to treat the disease. That's the frustration. So I understand you guys are frustrated, okay? But the fact is, if we don't get an independent financial control board, it ain't gonna change. And that's the easiest thing to get. So that's my.
How are, just given the reality that we have a mayor who has face it, BlackRock didn't vote for him.
No.
Yeah. And so, he doesn't really give a darn about us. So the question is, since we have this mayor, are we gonna agitate in a way that is going to possibly make this happen?
Well, first, understand that there's no way this guy's gonna get reelected, okay? I really believe that. He lied to us, all right? And I don't think he's gonna get reelected. We'll make sure he doesn't get reelected. But the point is, we can't wait 3.5 years. We can't wait 3.5 years, all right? And so the question is, what can we do?
Exactly.
And what I will argue is, it is in the mayor's interest to do what I just said. Because what the mayor could easily say is, I had no idea how bad this place was messed up, okay, even though he contributed to it. He borrowed $350 million to fund the pension plan right before the market crashed, lost half of the money, and now we're still paying for that. So my point is, and he didn't restructure any of this stuff either when he was mayor. So the point is, if he really cares anything about the city, it actually will give him political cover. And he can say, look, I had no idea how bad the situation was. That's basically what's happening in Puerto Rico. The politicians will say publicly that they don't want it, but they know privately they have to have it because they can't do what needs to be done. And even the governor of Puerto Rico finally said, this is the only way forward. But you guys got to pressure him. You guys got to pressure him. The people have to pressure him. The media's got to pressure him. Look, I can get 60 Minutes in here and blow this place up. Seriously. I'm not sure that I want to do that. All right? But I can do it.
Why not?
No, I want to give people a chance. I can blow it up. I can make it, but but my point is, that's not what I prefer. Now, my house on the market, I'm planning to get out of here. And, you know, and I could just as easily say, to heck with it.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't. I care about my neighborhood, I care about my neighbors, I care about the city, you know, and so I'm trying to do something. But if you guys have another way forward, I'd be interested in hearing it. But that's the only way that I see that's gonna end up changing the status quo. And I actually think that it's in his interest. I think it, and Flato, oh, what a joke. I mean, don't get me going. I mean, you know.
Well, basically, there's no backbone in the city council. And unless you're able to grow back some more backbone to stand up, instead of sitting in your big, fat, white, comfy seats on your city council meetings, then you need to bring in the backbone that Mr. Walker's talking about. Okay? That's what has to happen. If you're either unwilling or incapable, okay? Respect yourselves. Look in the mirror and say, are we incapable of doing this? Bring in someone who is capable. Or resign.
Well, when I hear Scott and Katie saying they are willing to stand up and make all kinds of noise, but if the majority of the city council says, well, we don't really care about a couple hundred rich people, then, you know, it's not our guys who are the majority problem. I mean, I think that you guys are gonna be willing to make a lot of noise because we're all over you. I think the problem we also have to address is that the majority of these people aren't. And it's not a question that they lack backbone, they lack backbone against us.
Well, I think if you blindly vote on a budget, if you blindly vote for a mill rate that you don't know what that mill rate is going to be, then that's willful blindness. So it's the blind leading the blind, and it's very nice of you to come to their defense. But they're either gonna be part of the solution or they're gonna be part of the problem. And right now, we've got a big problem, and
Well, I have a meeting with Ken this week, and you know, honestly, we finished the budget season, and you know, the month of June, I know it was crazy with him, and I want to speak with him when I can have his attention. So I'm meeting with him this week to look at, you know, what are our debt obligations, what can we do about them, and really, you know, again, you know, the mayor ran on this idea of being open and transparent, and you know, he will not come forward with things like this. I mean, you mentioned the mill rate, and you know, most mayors, selectmen, whatever, will come out and say, well, here's the budget, and this is what our mill rate looks like. He wouldn't do that. We kept asking, but he wouldn't answer.
well, you should have made him. You should have forced him. You know, I mean,
It's just
this
that.
claim of
Yeah, I mean-
of being in this weak position is it's
Well-
just an excuse. It's an excuse.
So at this point, I'm looking to, you know, get that ball moving and seeing what we can do and use the input from you know, what you guys do.
What about,
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead, Pete.
You guys said you would lead the fight to reduce property taxes when you ran. That's what you said. Where is there any evidence of that?
As I said, we tried to trim this budget as much as we could.
So that's leading the fight. What you did was leading the fight.
Well, you know, Pete, I did where we could.
And how about the idea that you had no idea about the mill rate? The basics of the mill rate, and I'm an English major, are these. I want to get this for everybody at home. Make this really simple. So you have the budget, right? Let's make the budget $1,000. Then you have the grand list. Let's say the grand list, for simple sake, is 50. Okay. So how do you get the mill rate if you have a budget of 1,000 and the grand list of 50? You do 1 over 50 and you get 2%. Now 2% is 2 over 100. In the case of mill 1,000 rate, that would be 20 over 1,000. Now, I understand you said there might be some interesting things happening with this number, right, from the state? But how much? What percentage variance would you have had from the state that would have made this number dramatically different to the extent that you had no good sense of what the mill rate would be when you voted for the budget?
We had a sense of what the mill rate would be. We
And what was that
Just in
tax?
terms of conversation was probably around 52%.
52
52.
mills, okay,
Okay,
okay.
how-
Only 52,
the,
only 52.
how the mayor came up with 54, we don't know. He still has not been forthright. We think maybe.
I can tell you what happened.
Appeals,
It's very simple.
they
It's
bumped
math.
it.
No, it's very simple what happened. What happened was that, you know, people filed appeals,
Mhm.
okay?
Yeah.
And the grand list didn't go down by 15%, it went down by 20%, okay? Abject failure in this city, across the board, okay? Look, I understand how the charter works. I understand that the mayor has line item veto and that you guys don't have the votes to override it, all right? I understand that. We need all kinds of charter revision, but you know, that's gonna take time. So therefore, the only way we're gonna solve this problem is to turn over the city's finances to an independent financial control. That's the only way, all right? And what I would respectfully suggest, it's your guys' job to lead that charge, and it's your guys' job to get a majority of the council to go for that, and to try to convince the mayor to do it. Flato, I've checked out Flato. Flato is a bad joke, all right? He is not competent, he is not competent in his job. Flato said publicly that we don't have a problem. We have a temporary problem. I offered to meet with the mayor. I get paid a lot of money to help restructure states and cities, et cetera, okay? I offered to meet with him, do it for nothing, all right? He's, you know, and he still has not taken me up on that, even though publicly he said he would. He is part of the problem. He's not part of the solution. I'm talking about Flato and the mayor. And so, you know, we need somebody else to take over the finances of the city, because you guys don't
Dave,
Oh,
have.
can I ask, when you reached out to the mayor to meet, did you just not hear anything back? Or
No,
did
what
you
I
hear
heard back
no,
was,
or-
what I heard back was at first, Ken Flato called and said, I'd be happy to meet with you. I said, Ken, I'm happy to meet with you, but I want the mayor in the room. All right? You know, the mayor can have whoever he wants in the room, that's fine with me. If you're there, great. If Ed Adams is there, great. And he says, well, you know, the mayor's very busy. I said, well, we're talking about saving the city, okay? Does the mayor to be? He was in front of the Raw bar at Chris Meyer's house for an hour, you know, when Chris had his party. All right? He's got time to be in front of the Raw bar for an hour, but I didn't have time for a 30-minute meeting, okay? Then I got a call back from Danny Roach. And Danny said, well, let's meet. I'd like to talk to you about this and the Board of Education, some other things. I said, Danny, I'm happy to meet. I said, but then I assumed he was calling for the mayor. And then I communicated back with him. I said, is the mayor gonna be there? Oh, I don't know, the mayor's very busy. I said, well, Danny, I'm happy to meet with you, but the mayor needs to be there. And if the mayor's not gonna be there, I'm not gonna be there, okay? Because I'm taking time out of my schedule that I get paid for to do something for free. And I'm not gonna deal with an intermediary, although I have no problem if they're in the room. And so I've heard nothing back since then. And, you know, frankly, I don't expect to, because I don't really think he wants to solve the problem.
That's what I'm wondering,
not
if
sure I
you
disagree
guys
with you.
can
I mean,
really
you know,
push
and I know he led you guys on the
Should
criminal
there
aspect.
push for that, because it's,
Yeah.
Not only that, but now that it's obvious Black Rock is carrying the weight of the city, that mayor should be he should be in this right now.
Yep.
With you guys listening to us, he should be here on the 19th. He should be willing to sit down with Dave and John and all these people.
for this today.
There
I
should
saw
be no
him on the
brushing them
invitations.
off.
was it?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Like I said.
Well, Dave, why would, I mean, getting 60 minutes in here to do a show or a presentation on this mayor who was in jail, who is now mayor again, I mean, why don't we put pressure on him now before we wait to see what's gonna happen? We know it's going down the drain anyways. If you can get 60 minutes in here to do it, and
Well, the
they
problem
did
is,
this years ago.
I can get them in here. The problem is that they have to schedule things well in advance,
Right.
and, you know, it'll be months before the thing will be on air, you know. Believe me, I can get them in here. I've been on it 3 times myself, but the fact is, we need something before that.
No, I know
Alright.
that, but
Right,
given that
yeah,
we have a mayor who absolutely doesn't care,
evidently.
and to the degree that he cares at all, he only cares about himself. I think we're all in agreement about that, and he's really not that interested in all the rest of this, or he would have taken an hour out of his raw bar to meet with you. I think that we should get on the schedule, because then that's something that we can hold over his head and say, look, you know, we're happy to solve this now, or we're happy to have this, you know, you embarrass nationally, and it's your choice. And that might motivate him to at least think about this.
Mhm.
But it seems to me, the odds of these guys, even if they scream, yell, and sit in everybody's houses and pull you know, the Democrats and gun control, I don't know that the rest of city council's likely to grow a backbone, because they're fundamentally not even, you know, I don't even know that they're gonna be able to understand the
I don't think
idea.
they get it, Marcia, they have no idea because they
Right.
don't live over here. They
That's
Well,
the
but
thing,
I-
is
but
that
I-
they don't
see, I
have,
don't think
most
they're-
of the council members, their districts, their taxes went down.
You see, but
Yeah,
when you
here's,
look at-
here's,
I
the
mean,
here's the
a lot of
point.
It's
They
basically,
got that
But
better.
their property
But
values
here's-
plummeted too.
and their property values
But
plummeted.
here-
But
here's
can we
the
get
point.
like the North End people,
The
Brookline?
Brookline, we could, yeah, we
Okay,
can,
I mean,
oh,
we should-
absolutely,
I don't know how good they are at this point, I don't really know who they are at this point.
Mhm.
But they must, some people in those areas must have been affected by this.
I think Tuesday, with everybody coming out to support Dave and John at the public hearing, is gonna send a big message to the rest of the council, and I think it's great that, but I'm just saying, it could be a benefit to us, because they're gonna see the pressure that we're under, but that the city is under, because like, as you said, we're kind of the golden goose here. So, I mean, I think it's gonna make a big, it hopefully will get a lot of attention from these other council members that are, you know, on the other, you know, east side and Treeland area and whatever, that they see how serious this issue is. We can tell them, talk to them, we're blue in the
Right, well,
face.
some will always
But
be
the-
blind to it.
Yeah, well, of course, there's ones that are just gonna go along and go along and go along. But I think it's great that this will open up a lot of eyes that have been kind of oblivious to it. They're like, ah, Black Rock, whatever,
Well,
but,
but
And the other thing is, you know, now moving forward, okay, and the veto thing, I kinda get a little bit upset about that, I'm gonna be honest with you, because the veto issue is always on the table,
Mhm.
okay? That's why we have a city council. To be honest with you guys, I would have rather you two did not approve that budget and left all the blood on the
Absolutely.
mayor's hands.
Absolutely.
Now it's on yours. I would have respected
that. And let him veto it.
Right,
Cut the heck out of it. Do all the things that need to be done and let him veto it. And then it's his problem.
Yeah, that's,
All
then
right.
it's his problem. I mean, a little too late to say that, but that's how I feel about it. You know, now it's, everybody's angry at the entire council, and the mayor's kinda hiding. We're not, I don't even, I saw him putting a flag up somewhere yesterday.
Was it an
you know,
American flag?
no, it wasn't. I don't know, it was some celebration. But, so, you know, maybe that's something to think about moving forward.
Mhm.
I mean, even if you know the mayor's gonna veto something, so what? Stand up for what you think is right, what is right. You know, what's going to happen moving forward? You guys are gonna have to approve a lot of expenses moving forward. Maybe it's time we start saying no, 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 no. I'm gonna tell you what killed me with this, was knowing the mill rate was setting in and watching Ganem give away 50 grand to Second Chance.
That's not
Issues.
happening.
that hasn't,
Just to
But
be.
it's all in the paper.
Okay,
Oh, yeah,
but-
oh, no,
but
that's
Mary,
a
let me,
whole
let me
big-
just explain one thing. You know, there's sort of this contingency fund that we're calling it, it's about $2.6 million. That we held aside, you know, because there were some state issues about was the state gonna cut even more from us? And, you know, where are we gonna do with that? So, he wanted to take 250,000 and put it to his summer youth initiative,
Oh,
and I said no.
okay.
And,
I
you
wouldn't
know, I
vote.
said, no way. And
that
so
money
as a
was
committee,
earmarked
we
for
denied
tax,
it,
yeah.
and
That was
said,
earmarked, that was
"We'll find
supposed to
somewhere
go to taxpayer relief. I've said this to a number of people. If there was a resolution that they were gonna pay my kids' college tuition out of that money, I would vote no. That money, as far as I'm concerned, is for tax, should be used for tax relief, and that's something that we've actually just started discussing, that we would like to see a possible use of that money as a form of a rebate, looking at seniors whose taxes have gone up, looking at, it's gonna take a lot of number crunching, it's gonna take a lot of, you know, figuring out and how far can this $2.1 million go, But that's something that we talked about yesterday, and we are like very committed to try to
Because it
get
really
that
looked like a slap in the face.
pushed ahead.
Yeah,
And then
so Nestor called me the other day and said, we're not taking it from that fund.
They
I said,
can't.
good,
You just made me think of something else.
you know.
I know I'm gonna jump off subject, but Katie, you just made me think of something else. Helping seniors.
Mhm.
I know there's a senior tax break out there. I don't think seniors know about it. There is, seniors can go down to the town clerk and file to try to get a tax break. If they're on a fixed income only on Social Security, I don't know what all the qualifications are. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm only 45, but I know like if you're on just Social Security, and that's it, and you have no other income, and your mortgage is paid off, which is the case with a lot of people in Block Rock. They paid their houses off, they just can't afford the taxes. People need to hear about that, and it's something the city doesn't want to talk about. It's not something you want to make public to help the seniors. But one of the reasons I'm here is I'm so angry what's happening with seniors, because my mother's one of them, okay? She is eligible for that tax break. She's got to go down every year. Every year she's got to do it over again, but they do it right there for her in the town clerk's office. And they fill out the paperwork for it. It's like a half an hour's worth of people's time. They don't have to wait in line in the assessor's office. It's the town clerk's office. Seniors, Bridgeport wide, need to know about that. Because every senior I've talked to about it looks at me like, we've never heard of that before, we've never heard about it before. And I'm always like, I don't know if you're gonna be eligible, but I know it exists, it's there. So maybe that's something you guys can start getting out there. That at least, it stares those seniors that are really on the verge of,
Yeah. No,
in a direction. I didn't mean to go off the subject,
No,
but it
no.
came up and I wanted to
thank you.
address that.
John?
Scott, is that the budget book for this year?
Yes.
Okay. Would you dial up to the police department budget?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, get to the personnel page.
Yep.
How many police does it say we have?
They don't break that down for us very nicely, do they?
No, they don't. So, but if you add them up, which I've done, I think I talked about it with you,
Yeah.
would you hazard a guess as to how many they are saying we have?
I think I penciled in here and then is 330.
No, if you add those up, it says 470.
Okay, yeah, that's right. From
How many
what they
were you-
present. Yeah, sorry.
How many were you told they had?
Yeah,
A number between 330 and 350.
right.
So you have Mr. Flato presenting you with a budget with
Yeah.
phony numbers.
Well, more comes from Mr. Niquo, but yes, I agree with you. That
But
doesn't change.
Mr. Plato is making the apologies for it, okay?
Yeah.
Well, ask Nestor, ask Ken, why did you present a budget that shows this number and it's not accurate?
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody ask that?
Yes, we did, any number of
Okay,
times.
and the answer was,
More or less silence. We could not get a, straight answer on what was going on.
so were I to be talking to the US Attorney's Office, then I can't get an answer from you, you can't get an answer from the city. There's illegal information being provided at budget time to you. Let me take a step on the other side, and I would ask, well, maybe what they meant, by the way, you may not know it, but I've been to Mr. Adams, and I showed him a 2007-8 budget,
Mm-hmm.
in which there were 4 columns that deal with vacant, filled, unfilled, new. Did you get that?
No, we didn't get
You
that.
got 2 columns.
Right.
That assumes these are positions that people are in,
Yep.
or new, or I'm sorry, vacant, that's the other 2. You also got, back in 2007-8, you got what was the 2005 actual, the 2006 actual. Were you provided with that type of information?
Nope.
No. Okay, so for you to be, and you're aware that you didn't have that information,
Mhm.
and you paid $7,500, $15,000, whatever your number was, to an outside person to give you advice. What did he say? What would have happened with him as a state person providing information had he been given this type of information?
I'm sure he would have been equally frustrated.
And was he frustrated?
Yeah, he didn't know how to get at the correct numbers as well, and you know that's something. He's more a revenue guy in terms of his experience, as opposed to trying to figure out budgets from that side.
So
but
he, in other words, you probably needed 2 advisors.
it could be, yeah.
Because
I mean, yeah.
50% of your money coming from outside taxpayer.
Mm-hmm.
Was he valuable?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the short, in the summary as to where money was coming from, how much money is coming from pilots? Payments in lieu of taxes?
For the whole year,
Yeah, in the prospective year.
I don't know that number right off the top of my head.
13 to 14 million is what we've been getting and what was budgeted. There was another new line at the bottom for 5 million representing 0.9. You know that summary sheet they gave you?
Yeah.
Okay. On that sheet, 0.93, new 5 million. Where's the new source of pilot money coming from? Do you know?
I think you may be talking about the car tax reimbursement.
I thought that was up around 13, 14 million.
No,
Only 5 million?
right.
Okay.
Do you wanna-
Steve's shaking his head.
Because you guys are getting into some deacon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I heard you say, okay, is Flato lied to you. Okay, I'm not, let me just cut through it. Flato lied to you, all
Well,
right?
and
So
I
why
would go.
do-
I
why
would go
does
to
it-
his boss.
So why doesn't the council have a vote of no confidence and ask for his resignation? Why don't you guys use the power that you do have, okay? The power you do have is to be able to, call for people's resignations, hold people accountable, do no confidence votes, do whatever the heck you can do. I mean, don't sit back there and tell, if somebody lied to me, let me tell you what, they'd have been fired a long time ago. And I'd have made a hell of a big deal out of it. That's the problem. I mean, what bothers me more than anything else is liars. And we got a lot of liars, in this administration.
The other thing,
Yep.
you know that I have been pursuing a specific report now for many months.
Yep.
It is the June 30th,
Mhm.
2015
Yep.
final monthly financial report.
Mhm.
Do we have it?
I'm hoping to get that Friday when I meet with Ken.
Okay, so he has been resistant to that idea.
He has. It's
Yeah.
been a little odd.
And my reason for pursuing it is that until 2013, we never saw that for 20 years as citizens, and to see where the money actually is spent in a budget. And you may say, well, why is that necessary? Well, it would have been helpful to you folks to see in the past year exactly what was spent in various areas as you're looking to do cost cutting. Because the budget that you're being given monthly is showing, and we're projected to be 100% spent at end of year in most of your items. And that's a non-helpful
Right.
column. So it's up to you to be asking for columns that will be helpful to you if you're doing watchdog work. But again, so if as David said, if you've been lied to, vote of no confidence. But that means that you gotta go back to your present leader, your council president, because he's doing things the way they've always been done, and under his guidance. And he has done something, I don't wanna make it, but he's done something, that was out of sorts in 2013, that this monthly report dealt with and disclosed. So the more open, accountable, transparent, which are words that Joe ran on, but not ones that he's emulating. In the front of that budget book, right after the mayor's transmittal letter, what is the next page? Is it a showing of the city employment status of all the people in the categories of department?
That is in here. You're talking about,
In the budget book, after the transmittal letter
Yeah.
from the mayor, typically,
Yeah.
Steve would know, there was Steve Staster, there was a chart, right?
Right.
That had all the employees of the city, and so when Mayor Finch would point to cuts,
It would say sort of like required by charter, and it had sort of.
it had core employees,
core,
and on the far right side, it had unessential,
Yeah.
not necessary. And under not necessary were things like the airport, there were a few of them.
Non-essential services.
Not essential, right, but the core that were called for by state or by charter, that's absent.
Yeah.
So you folks had no idea this year about his target, his plan for employees in the city, right?
well, I mean, the only overall, they give you they gave us an overall total, which for, again, a mayor who ran on cutting budget, his projected total employees is 14 over what the previous budget was.
Well,
Which,
Why,
to me is
why
kind
in terms of open accountability, transparency, is the council not asking for a chart today? What is the chart that you're looking for? And because he's claiming, or Al
Look.
Harris is claiming budget cuts, cost cutting. And I won't deny that many people have left office,
Mhm.
but people have replaced them perhaps in other areas. What's the overall body count? If we watch football, we watch baseball, somebody is checking in, checking out of the game. Hockey, basketball, you can't have too many people on the court. Football, you get penalized if you have 13 guys on the field, right?
Yep.
How many players do we have? You
I
need to know that.
I just want to
You're
insert
talking about
one
the most basic stuff.
personal
that you-
thing here, John,
Yeah.
and I think during this particular budget season, we're trying to figure out, and again, the budget is what they project. This is what they want. So they want 475 police officers or whatever. We're trying to understand how many vacancies there were in each department. And that was numbers that we asked from the OPM director to get to us. And for me personally, some of you know, my father passed away in the middle of this. So I didn't have my full attention focused there, especially when the final, last minute of the fourth quarter, if you want to put it that way. So when we made those final cuts, I wasn't physically there. I was trying to deal with a family situation. So, to get to those final cuts in the final couple days, I just wasn't physically there to say, hey, we really need to know what this number is. And I don't know if other members of the council just weren't able to push and get those numbers, and because maybe Scott's not there, they're gonna just run roughshod and ignore. I don't know, but I can't disagree with you that this wish list of 400 something cops versus when they have 350 something.
You can't carry the whole council on your shoulders. You're one person.
I
You're
understand
5% of the council, so everybody's gotta cut you slack for what you do.
Right.
But Mary's gotta share, Kate's gotta share, there are other people that gotta share in responsibility. The man who's running for state senate right now has gotta share a larger amount because he's been here a long time. He knows the ropes, and he has guided the ropes in illegal ways in the past. I've said it, and I'll keep saying it until somebody wants to answer for it, but nobody wants to answer for it in this city.
What
What
happens if you guys don't
David,
approve a
please
budget?
let me, I'm sorry I was late, but I was talking with someone earlier this morning. I woke up late, and I need to see this person, and there are two stories that I'm bubbling on, that it won't be 60 minutes this year. It'll be the U.S. Attorney's Office this year for things that are ongoing, okay? The way things are running. It won't be pleasant for anybody to see it. We are being, it's nice that you're here. I had no idea that this meeting was on. Where is your publicity? When Senator Moore started, when she got into office and started having meetings, I was alerted to her meetings. This is only a Facebook deal. It's too bad, but there were friends who said, there's a meeting here at 10 o'clock. I said, I'll try and get here. it's important to listen. Our neighborhood will be picked off against other neighborhoods. It always is. Oh, it's those people in Black Rock. Well, it's not just Black Rock. Something I have not heard yet, but a friend who's a realtor has, David, did you get any information from Paul yet on the commercial side?
Oh, yeah. The overwhelming percentage of the commercials went up. Taxes went up. We've been lied to about the 65% and all that kind of stuff.
13 or 1400 commercial.
95% or something.
Yeah, 95%
Went up.
of commercial properties.
Taxes went up.
That he measured, the taxes went up. Now, if you're doing that to your commercial establishment, what's that saying to economic development in the city?
Yeah, I'd like to just make a point, which is, I think in terms of selling the rest of the council on this, you know, and you've said that the message you've gotten is, well, a couple hundred homes, you know, and the attitude may be they can just hold off buying their second Mercedes, you know? But I think that the larger issue is what's going on, what it's doing to the city. And I think this issue on commercial development, I think this issue about investment in Bridgeport, I think this issue about whether we're gonna hold on to business or lose business, or I mean, people are trying to develop, Steel Point, other places, so we have more of a tax base. I think this is something that maybe the rest of the council will listen to, whereas their concern for, you know, our property values may not be as urgent. That's one point. And another point I wanna make, and I know this is slightly, you know, tangential, but I'm also part of a group called No to ONG, because ONG, as everyone knows, is a horrendous polluter of East End. Now they wanna bring it to West End, they wanna bring it over here and pollute Cedar Creek and give the kids in P.T. Barnum who don't have asthma. And a bunch of us are trying to fight that, as hopefully everybody knows. But ONG must owe fines. I mean, there is money that you have to pay when you are in violation of safety regulations. And my guess is ONG aren't the only people in this city who owe fines to the city.
Do they go to the city or they go to the state? The funds? I don't know.
Well, I mean,
Depending on what it
that's
is.
something to be looked into,
Yeah.
which is why are we not fighting not only for the pollution and for the health and for the well-being of people in this city, and this is not just Black Rock, but to collect money that is due from businesses that are under-reporting assets, from, you know, I mean, from people who are damaging the city. I think that there's, you know, I mean, from what I would not be surprised if there's some sweetheart stuff going on here. But
Marcy, I'm interrupting you for a moment. I have been on the details, many of them, for a half dozen years now. I'd be happy to work with you, but when I'm saying something, there's some fact behind it. You are guessing that there's some fact behind it, and research needs to be done so it's there and everybody can see it. So we don't need to guess. I'd like to talk to you after the meeting, and let's get it on a basis, as David is talking about, where it can be agreed by anybody that this is not the way a railroad should be run, and it's being allowed to be run this way. The other high-level issue I'd say is, why did the council allow a budget to be brought in? As in most towns, education is an important issue. It's 40, 45%, 50%, 55%, depending upon the community. But you just let it, as a council, for the most part, you just let it sit there and without a response. And that is incredible to me, because rather than be isolated as Black Rock or Brooklawn or North End, and I was with city employees in the last 24 hours who live in Sutton in the Northeast, their taxes went up. Now, they only may have gone up $100 rather than 2,000 or 5,000 bucks, but they went up. So they're not the part of the quote-unquote 65% whose taxes went down. What cuts across the city for people who don't, especially who don't pay taxes, is their school situation for their children is changed, and the council essentially did nothing that will stick. You may have a 2 million or a whatever fund a reserve fund, but that doesn't begin to cut with the argument, and that, what about the children? What about the children and that whole cause? Because the one night they did come out, that was the subject, okay? So the fact that people can't get it together, because most of the people in this room were not here on those other 5 or 6, I mean, I've complimented you people publicly for having 5 hearings this year. And plus a couple council hearings during that budget process. And people didn't come out, except at that time. You didn't have an answer for that. So the school system, here we get the bright new schools opening up or renovations being done, but the operating is such that major things are gonna have to happen this year to change it, because didn't anybody ask, gee, they got contracts that are going up, yeah, they have attrition, they have a whole bunch of things, but they must need 10 to 12 million anyway, if they say it's 15 million. Where was that response of the city council representing all the districts, all the parents, all the 22,000 to 25,000 youths? So what was the response there? Because that ties all of us together, whether you're in Black Rock School or a neighborhood school in the East End or whatever. What's the response?
I would have been happy to take that contingency fund and put it right over to education.
Yeah, but
I would do that
but
today.
why wasn't the administration tasked with, please explain to the whole public why you have ignored the 15 million request from the Board of Ed? Why?
I don't wanna say we ignored it, and I know we weren't able to fill it, and maybe if we could have cut the police budget by 10 million, we would have put it right over there. But again, you know, one of the things I said
Well, the
earlier,
police
John,
budget, we've already agreed, it's a phony budget.
I agree.
It's illegal.
I agree.
So if you had sent them back to give us a real budget, instead, at the time that you were doing this, the mayor is at the state level asking to renegotiate one of the things that the Finch administration failed to cause part of the $20 million problem this year, or last year, in the year ending June 30th, was the ignoring the 7-8 million more because of the overtime effect of police pensions that has to be funded by us today. So what did the mayor do? We have $7.5 million due this year, cut it down by 4.5. Next year, so he guaranteed that for the 4 years of his term,
it'll be
or
lower.
3 of the first 4 anyway,
Yep.
he got 4.5 million off.
No, John, that's not, that got changed, that was his original proposal, he only got 2 years relief. He got 5 million this year and 5 million next year.
The Office of Fiscal Accountability sent me a report that said it's 4 years.
You were probably looking at the original bill that went through, not the,
Okay,
not
can you get me what is here?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I mean, part of the problem is, you assume that people are operating in good faith. They're not operating in good faith, okay? And so the real question is, what's the sanction, right? Well,
Right.
If the council never approves the budget, what happens?
It goes into effect.
The mayor's budget.
So the mayor's budget, all right,
Yeah.
so I come back to where I started, all right?
Yeah.
You're not dealing with somebody with integrity. You're not dealing with somebody who is, you know, is trying to change things, okay? You're providing false and misleading information. We were lied to about what he was gonna do, allegedly, all right? You need to take it out of his hands, you know? You don't have the power to do what needs to be done. We need an independent financial control board. The governor needs to get off his keister and do something, all right? You know, before he goes to Washington with Hillary Clinton, if she gets elected, all right? We are on fire. We are on a burning platform. The data I saw, 95% of commercial properties went up in taxes. Who do you think creates jobs? You know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't consider myself wealthy. Maybe somebody on the east side and the south side considers myself wealthy. I don't. I've spent most of my life in public service, okay? You know, but I can tell you this, you know, I don't have a mortgage and I pay more in property taxes than most people pay in a mortgage. I'm basically paying sales taxes on my house every year, not the same percentage, but in some states it would be. It's unbelievable. And people don't understand that we got a problem, that we're not, and you look at these unfunded obligations, what do they mean? They mean taxes are going up even more. They're going up even more unless something changes.
Let me interject.
It's just math.
Let me interject real quick,
Yeah.
just on, sort of on the macro level here a little bit, that, you know, we're talking about, when you're trying to make social change, when you're trying to, you know, affect change, one of the first things you gotta do is figure out who your allies are, right? And, you know, we've talked a little bit about that today. But remember, this is not a unique problem to Bridgeport. You know, every city in the state of Connecticut is facing, you know, maybe different degrees, varying degrees, but Hartford's facing the same problem. Hartford's mill rate is 72. Their unfunded liabilities are almost as bad, if not just as bad as ours are. You know, Waterbury's mill rate is 64. You know, they're facing the same issues. New Haven's in the same boat. So this is as much as, you know, as painful as this is for us sitting in this room, and we feel it here. Remember, our allies are those other cities in the state, because people are sitting in rooms just like this in other cities in the state dealing with the same issues. And where it really has an effect is the confluence of when you overtax the citizens and the businesses in Bridgeport, you overtax the citizens and the businesses in Hartford, you overtax the businesses and citizens in Waterbury, all of a sudden you develop a situation where you've got a state full of cities that are not economic drivers. And in our 21st century economy that we're in now, where young people and jobs and businesses want to relocate in dynamic, interesting, fun cities, we don't have it. We don't have it. And Dave and I were talking a little earlier about this McKinsey report that came out about the state's economic competitiveness. The number one factor they pointed to for the state's economic competitiveness, number one, is we don't have dynamic cities. We don't have cities that people point to and say, when I graduate college, that's where I want to move to. That's where I want to relocate my business to. And you're right. When you jack up a mill rate, when you put the tax burden on the backs of commercial property, when you put the tax burden on the backs of a community like ours that has that's livable, walkable, you know, has access to mass transit, a place where young professionals want to move to, you know, you don't just hurt this neighborhood. You hurt the whole city as a whole, because you hurt, and the state as a whole, because you're hurting the ability of this community in particular to attract and retain those young people that we desperately need as the innovators of our economy. So I think that's the message across levels of government, whether that be our congressional representation, whether that be our state people, whether that be our local people, you know, whether that be the average citizen. That's the message that I think we need to continue to beat and say, you want the state's economy to rebound? You want the state to be economically competitive? We need cities that are going to lead the way. We need cities that are going to be regional economic drivers. And if you continue to just isolate Bridgeport, isolate Waterbury, isolate Hartford, you're not doing that. I mean, look, we had some success in the last year or 2 years, right? We did this piece of the sales tax sharing where the car tax got capped and there's additional revenue. John was right. I think it is more like 13 million in new revenue to the city after the city is made whole from the cut in the car tax. Then there's an additional 7 million over and above that. You know, we were more than happy to work with the administration to try to figure out, you know, some fix to the pension thing. Of course, you know, the small fix we did this year, you know, it was best we could do in a week at the end of session. But you're right. I think long term, you know, the state needs to be a partner in helping all the cities in the state figure out how to do that. You know, we did a couple other things. We did a local option for admissions tax. So we got rid of the state admissions tax for the ballpark and the arena. And the city council, I think you guys are going to be introducing legislation. I know Scott and Katie and I have talked about this, where they're going to introduce legislation here at the city level to allow us to recoup a little bit of the ticket price for events at the arena. You know, because again, we plow those streets, we provide the police service, we provide the fire service. You know, those are would be otherwise taxable properties that are off the roll. But you know, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We got a lot more we got to do. But I think the message everybody can help with, you know, and sort of my plea to everybody a little bit is you got to help us spread the message that our cities have to be competitive in order for the state to be competitive. this old mantra of, you know, the suburban office park, it's just not working for us anymore.
So what's being done on the state level, Steve, to address this issue? I mean, how, you know, who's driving this on the state level, and is there a response? I mean, Malloy was the mayor of Stamford.
Right.
Stamford's doing relatively well in this department.
Right.
But, you know, I mean, in theory,
Stanford's grand list has grown faster than expenses. It's one of the few cities in the state over the last
right.
20, 30, 40 years that can say that.
Right, so my point, but you know, when he was elected, one of the notions was this guy understood the needs of cities. So what I wanna know is who's driving, addressing the issues that you're raising in statewide, and, you know.
Well, I think, like I just said, I mean, I think we've started down this path. We've had better success over the last year and a half, even in extraordinarily tough state budget cycles, than I think we've had in a very, very long time. You know, the mere fact that for the longest time, the state of Connecticut said, look, you gotta fund your city, you gotta fund your town, you gotta fund your municipality, you got the property taxes. Go collect your property taxes and that's it. We're not, you know, maybe we'll give you some grants here, we got a pilot formula, you know, we'll give you some money for your hospitals and your colleges. You know, we'll give you some education cost sharing money, whatever, but for the most part, your only source of revenue is the property tax. And what we did last year for the first time was we said we were giving a small percentage of the sales tax. We would love to be able to do more, but the state just, right now, we just can't afford it. But it's a revolutionary idea, first time in the history of the state of Connecticut, that we're giving municipalities a small percentage of the sales tax. So for the first time, you know, the one that kills me is the Trumbull Mall, right? The Trumbull Mall was built on Bridgeport's border 40, 50 years ago. Literally, it's a stone's throw away from the border. It had the effect of basically decimating all the downtown. Ended up driving all the department stores in downtown Bridgeport out of business, right? For the last 40 years, 45 years, the town of Trumbull has gotten the property tax revenue from that mall, which has allowed them to keep the mill rate in Trumbull much lower than Bridgeport, which of course has led to a lot of the flight of people out of Bridgeport into Trumbull. But Trumbull doesn't have the fire department big enough to put out a major fire at that mall. Guess who has to do that? We do. We pay for it. Because we don't have regional cost sharing in any way, shape, or form. So for the first time, what we did last year is if you walk into Trumbull Mall and you buy a pair of slacks, you still pay the same 6.35% sales tax you've always paid, but only 5.85% of that sales tax is going back to the state anymore. 0.5% is staying in our region, in our 6-town region, being distributed back. So that $13 million that we talked about that the city is getting this year to make whole from the car tax cut and the overage money, that's that 0.5%. So that there is a small percentage of, when you walk into that Trumbull Mall, Bridgeport's getting something for it.
Relative to what Steve said, Stanford has been better at being aware of cost cutting. See, there's revenue, get more revenue in, that'll solve the problem. But what about cost cutting? And that's something that I believe that year after year after year, Steve had to face Sherwood, and there wasn't open, accountable, transparent then, and at least enough after you begin to look at it after the fact and see where money was spent. If I stand corrected, and if anybody finds in any statement I make, because I'm firing them off regularly, it's wrong, let me know. Don't leave me hanging out there. So if it's not a $53 million or $57 million cost, as the State Office of Fiscal Accountability has said, if it's a lesser amount because you only granted the city 2 years of relief, and then good, I'll stand corrected. But it's finding out where you.
No, I don't mean to call you wrong at all. What happened, John, is just so we can talk about this offline.
I know I'm not
there
wrong.
Was an original bill. There was an original bill, and then there was fixed to the bill as part of the implement process.
And the news media doesn't pick up on it,
right.
But it's critical, and we all ought to know that, because 2 points. One, the city council, once the mayor goes to the state to ask for relief, city council is out of it. You've got no vote on that. So had the original bill that you're telling me he could have provided relief to himself and whoever will be the next mayor for a couple of years. But in the out years, what would have happened? We would have had $53 million more to pay as a city. That's an encumbrance on your future budget. That you had nothing, it's just here, we gotta pay for it. Now, so cost cutting, very difficult when people have stuck you with and you've got no control over your, David, what do you call them? Expenses?
Mandatory, isn't it?
Yeah, mandatory, but there's old expenses.
Oh, legacy.
Legacy expenses, okay.
Legacy costs.
So I'm not an accountant, but I compare numbers. So the second thing is that I got to talk to the mayor of Stamford at a function, and he was so excited to talk to someone else who knew about OPEB, other post-employment benefits.
Retiree healthcare.
Retiree healthcare, as well as retirements, as well as overtime. And he just said his police are not in, and they will, as long as he's mayor, they won't go into the same plan. Why? Because overtime, that'll be an additional expense. The public still hasn't ever gotten a straight story as to what the real cost of the police department. So they're giving you phony figures here, and we don't know what the cost of that move to put their overtime, external and internal, into our budget formulas for years to come. We don't know that. Who does know it? Well, I've asked the state for that. So if you can get some help, I'll copy you on everything I ask OPM on the state level to find out, because if these folks don't know, maybe what we need is a new master plan for the police department. And we probably don't have enough consultants at this time to do that for us, but and there's some things that need to be done, but the 1/3 of city side expenses that are for the police, in other words, if we have, take education out and just look at what is the rest on the city budget, it's about 300 million plus, and over 100 million, 110 million is the police department. How did 330 people cause, why are we spending 1/3 of our city funds on that department? Doesn't that bear some analysis? Seems to me it does.
Look, let's stipulate a few things, okay, that are just based on fact. Connecticut's in terrible financial condition, It's in the bottom tier on competitiveness. It's a net outbound state, all right? It's got its own problems that it needs to solve, and it needs to get on solving them sooner rather than later. I think it's good, some of the things you talked about, Steve, I think that's good. But it's got cancer, all right? It's not treating the cancer, you know? It's shifting around, you know, the chairs on the Titanic's on fire and it's sinking, all right? You know, Bridgeport's the same situation, all right? And you guys don't have the power. The mayor doesn't have the willingness or ability to do what needs to be done, okay? We can't look to the state to get bailed out because the state is in terrible shape.
Right.
Now, in fairness, we're getting taken advantage of by the state on the education formula. We are not being treated fairly. In addition, the fact of the matter is that while Hartford has a higher mill rate, I don't know what it is this year, but for a number of years, residential property owners only pay property tax on 25% of the value of their home, not 70% of the value of their home, all right? So the effective tax rate in Hartford is a lot less than the effective tax rate in Bridgeport was on homeowners. People don't want to talk about that, okay? But that's a fact, all right? And so, look, you know, we can't count on the state to bail us out, although they need to do a better job in the education formula. We ought to get the same kind of relief that Hartford gets, and if we don't, I don't understand why and how that can be justified. They've got state government, New Haven's got Yale, we got nothing.
Right.
We got nothing. And by the way, as you guys probably know, but I bet a lot of the other council members don't know, Steel Point's a separate tax district. We don't get anything from that.
Well,
That is a separate,
Maybe 15%.
maybe, that is a separate tax district. The revenues are being dedicated first to repay the state for doing the infrastructure, okay? And then we talk about these new schools. We don't get any money from that. And by the way, that didn't help education one iota, all right, if you will. So I come back to where I started, all right? You guys don't have the power. The mayor doesn't have the integrity and the ability to do what needs to be done. We need an independent financial control board. And maybe that independent financial control board needs to be structured similar to Puerto Rico, which the way that was structured is it's mandatory for Puerto Rico, but other territories can use it if they want. And Steve's right, we're not the only city with problems. I would argue ours are worse than most, but you know, we're not the only one with problems. And maybe we ought to be trying to solve this in a more comprehensive rather than a piecemeal matter. And maybe what the governor ought to be doing is appointing a financial control board to be able to deal with multiple cities within the state, because quite frankly, 80% of the problem's the same. 80% of the problem's the same. So why just solve the problem in one city? And that will also help with regard to the McKinsey thing, right? If you want to get revitalized, you got to deal with these legacy costs in all in an equitable fashion. And if you don't, you're not going to get revitalized. You're not.
Yeah. If I just
Thank you, Steve.
introduce a neighbor of ours who came by, Lucille Bish. You wanted to speak on a couple different things, right? If you want to? No?
I just wanted to give you information that
Oh, okay.
I had
All right,
nothing to
all right.
speak on. Not at this time, thank you.
Sure. Okay.
I just think that, you know, everything you say makes 100% sense, okay? And I totally support it. I just don't want to hold my breath about this mayor or even the rest of this city council supporting this. And so I think that anything that we can do to hold their feet to the fire in terms of media coverage, in terms of other kinds of things. I mean, certainly there was media interest when we elected a felon for mayor, okay? I mean, people found that somewhat interesting. I just think we have to do whatever we can to hold their feet to the fire, whether it's to embarrass them, to threaten them with action, as you were saying. I don't know if there are things that warrant the state's attorney, but I think we need to. I'm sorry?
U.S. attorney.
The
not
U.S.
state
attorney?
U.S. attorney.
The U.S. attorney, but I mean, I think we ought to put all this on the table. And if it can't come from the city council, then it's gotta come from somewhere. But I don't think these guys are gonna say, oh yeah, you're right, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
I think that there has to be some, you know, you seem to, you know a lot more about this than I do, but somebody
Right.
has to be doing, taking action that is going to sort of make it in their interest, or at least, necessary to take some of the kind of action you're talking about.
Well, and what can you do that can hurt? In other words, where does he have to get your approval on something, whether it's personnel or whatever else, to say no. Okay, I mean,
in terms of money
you gotta
transfers,
figure out where do you have power, okay?
that's probably right, in non-budget times, that's, if they wanna transfer money, that's where we can say no.
Well, but I
And-
mean, I don't know what all
and that-
powers you have.
at
What I'm
this point,
saying is that you gotta figure out what they are, and you gotta leverage every power you have, and.
I think, and, I think everybody in the room agrees that we don't really know what's happening in terms of employment and, what are all our capital plans going to and how are those being expended and processed. And those are the things that I wanna, sit down with Ken and Nestor and say, hey, can you put it out here for everybody to see and know what the heck's going on and knowing where our dollars are going? And I think that's a good start.
Monday night, were you to fail, were you to say, point of personal privilege, after the flag, after the prayer, point of personal privilege, I am gonna stand here and I will not vote on anything until we have these delivered to us. A, B, C, D. Would be better for both of you to do it. Because again, you are in the public eye compromised because you've got a spouse who works for the city and a brother who's a very important employee and cog in the DTC. And that's who's running the city. I mean, when the mayor, the stories I get from trustworthy people, when Mario is interviewing people for positions, where is that in civil service, human resources, or whatever, to run a department in the city? And this is going on, ongoing, whatever, and I hear so little. So I think you or both of you need to stand up and say, until we get, you made us a team, we've been elected to be a team responsible, but we haven't been equipped. You're not giving us gloves, they're playing hardball out there, you don't give us gloves, we need bats. Give us the accurate information routinely. Be
Yeah.
open, accountable, transparent.
Yeah.
If you're not gonna do that, I, for one, am gonna be a negative vote. Now, how many people will you be a hero to, and how many will you be a go-to? Can you sustain that? That's the first part. I think there are probably 3 or 4 other people on the city council at the moment who will back you up.
Absolutely.
Now, and the other people will Brian Lockhart and others begin to report that it's because of these conflicts of interest that nobody seemed to ever say we had. Will they come out? That's the way to begin to fight the war, but you gotta have the courage to stand up, okay?
And, you know, similarly, in terms of, you know, conflict of interest and things like that, one of the things I think that we as a council should disclose is what are our connections in the city? You know,
An
who's-
annual affidavit. The
Yeah.
Hartford affidavit for the fire department is a good example of an annual affidavit, not just for the city council, but for every board and commission member. We've had, in the last 6 years, we've had a state representative whose residence was challenged. We've had at least 2 commission chairpersons whose residences have been challenged. The Democratic County Committee chair, where does he spend 180 nights a year? And how about, there was a councilman who didn't stand for office again. Did he really spend his nights at this? No, we don't know what his voting address was. We don't know what his registration for his car was. These are all things. Let's put some real seriousness so that if digging is deep, people are by affidavit. There's a penalty if you lie here, if you cheat. You put yourself in a jackpot. We don't have that.
Yeah, no, I
Trust but verify. Trust
yeah,
but
I
verify.
think, you know, that's just start on the personal level, just see
But
where.
I think it takes someone to stand up,
Yeah.
as one of your council people did within the past 30 days, and say, what has happened with the appointments to the fire department is an embarrassment. It's a racial embarrassment. Because there were 2 people in good standing who weren't even interviewed. So if you go into a process and you're gonna take good people who have followed the rules and are in a hierarchy and could be candidates for chief, and you ignore them, you don't even give them an interview, and then he made a statement and he left the meeting. And you know who I'm talking about, so those are actions, that's a courageous action, I believe. Could be stupid and short-sighted, but it's courageous. You need to have some courage here and do this. Thank you for holding the meeting. I would love you to put a schedule together so we know ahead of time, that maybe quarterly, and you can pick your subjects, whatever. That's a service to the community.
That's, we
I wasn't
don't
here.
disagree, we would like to, we just, have found that, meeting schedules and things like that, we haven't been able to coordinate a whole lot, and this was about as soon as we could put something
Well,
together.
the other alternative is, what do you do on committees? You have co-chair, so you could be co-chair of district representation. Each of you preserve your own individual personal statements, opinions, but you could say, we've set up this system, Scott will chair half of them, Kate will chair the other half, sign up that way, and if you can both be here for it, fine, but set it up ahead of time. And
Tuesday,
if the
July
people
19th.
don't come,
Yeah.
you know, shame on them.
Thanks for doing this.
All right,
I
yeah,
appreciate
thank
it.
you. Thank you.
And hopefully you guys will be there
No.
Tuesday night.
And I appreciate all of the feedback.
All right, thank you guys, thanks everyone.